Well, the bell just rang for school to start at 1 o'clock this afternoon, and we're going in and see what's going on in the old classroom.
Miss Blue Grower and Miss Gustafson. And we'd like to welcome you to our Pioneer School. You all look like you have wonderful imaginations. Do you have wonderful imaginations? What you need to do is to imagine that you're living 100 years ago and you're going to school in a one-room schoolhouse. How many of you are first graders? Any first graders? Second grade? Third grade? Fourth grade? Fifth grade? Ooh. Sixth grade? Seventh grade? Eighth grade? Terrific. We would have had a school, boys and girls, from first grade all the way through eighth grade in one room. So this is going to be very authentic. How many of you have brothers and sisters in this room? Oh, you would have probably gone in the same classroom with your brothers and sisters. And you would really have to behave, because if you got in trouble at school, guess what would be the first thing your brother or sister would tell your parents when they got home? What? You did something wrong. And I bet Mom and Dad wouldn't be real happy either, would they? No. So we're going to begin the day like they did with the Pledge of Allegiance. But boys and girls, the Pledge of Allegiance is a little different now than it was then. Up on the board here, we have the Pledge of Allegiance as it was originally written. I pledge allegiance to the flag and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. What parts are missing from nowadays? No. Do you know, dear?
When we say I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America.
Right, that part was added in 1932. And there's one other part that was added later.
We say one nation under God.
Under God was added in 1953. And when they said the Pledge of Allegiance, they said it in a different way. They did not put their hands over their hearts. They saluted the flag. And we're going to practice that. Now, you can sit while we practice it. Miss Gustafson is going to show you how to do it. And you watch her, and then we're going to say the pledge and sing America. Miss Gustafson? I pledge allegiance to the flag and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So we'd like to ask you to stand now and say the Pledge of Allegiance as you would 100 years ago. Everyone? I pledge allegiance to the flag and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And for the adults that are here, I think it's probably self-explanatory why we changed from salute to hand over the heart after World War II, or before too. Now we will sing America. We want to hear your wonderful singing voices. My country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrims' pride, from every mountain side, let freedom ring. Okay, and maybe and fold your hands on your desks, please.
One other thing they did in Pioneer School is they often had a Bible reading.
Well, as you can hear, the cloggers are on in the tent, And Larry's just going to go up and catch some clogging for you. Right next to the cloggers, you can hear them in the background. We have a great tradition in Polk County, and one of the most popular places at the county fair and for church suppers and everything else is the Bone Lake Lutheran Church. And it has a great reputation for home cooking and all kinds of specialties that come out of Bone Lake Lutheran. So we wanted to get this on camera for history, that everybody has just been crowding in here for the last couple hours for lunch. One of the things that we probably won't be able to capture the event on camera with so many things going on, but that will be coming up in a little while in the tent, is a program that is about Frederick, and it's named after Frederick. And Clarence Fenton is here, and Betty Fenton. And Betty, you're playing the trollop who gets off the train. Tell me about that.
Well, she just got kicked out of the last town, and she only had time to get her underwear and her suitcase, and she got on the next train, and we got here to Frederick, and so I thought there's a lot of prospects here, and this is where I'll stay for a while.
All right.
Until they chase me out of to the next town.
Where are you going to stay on Main Street?
Yes,
oh,
on Main Street.
On Main Street. All right.
The closest saloon.
All right. Well, that sounds good. And
one of the prospects.
yeah. Okay. Well, that's not too bad.
No.
Better you than somebody else, right? All right. And I haven't had a chance. I saw Vivian Bile here a little while, but I wanted to thank the intercounty leader for doing this great job of the Centennial program, the history of Polk County. This was just a great thing, and so pass that on to the leader people.
That. Yep.
Okay.
That I will. Well, thank you, Harvey.
Yep.
Always
well,
good to see ya.
Well, it's always good to see you, and I've never seen you dressed up like this. So.
Well, my mother doesn't either.
Oh, okay. Well, Clarence and Betty Fenton, and she really is straight-laced. So.
Really, Mom, I am.
Yeah. Okay.
Historian on the trains out of Osceola, and I took the bookwork, being a switchman brakeman. We didn't do the apprenticeship, and they found out that I could talk, and so they turned me loose and gave me a title. So that's one thing I do. Now our barn's been turned into a theater, and we have a beautiful play coming up this next weekend by a local author about the Hillerud family. She was one of twin girls growing up on a farm family in the 1950s, and it's about family life and about farm life. And they've done a beautiful job of making a play out of the book that she wrote that's been published by the Minnesota Historical Press. So that's something else I've been doing. And so I got into land development. All of this happened because my dad lost his job in the Depression in the city back in 1939. And so I had a very interesting life because my dad lost his job.
Well, John Schilberg is one of the treasures of Polk County. When we talk about people who have had an impact on Polk County in 150 years, a lot of people know John Schilberg, who has been...
We've got a lot of talented people that are making the art farm actually be a going institution, and we're very happy about that. it's one of the barns that was fortunate to find a new use. See, I had an obsolete barn on my hands, and I couldn't find, I couldn't afford to keep it up. I didn't want to watch it fall down or decay, and so I gave it away to the art folks, and a lot of volunteer people have made a going theater out of it. So I'm real happy about that. So that's been another thing that I've been doing.
And parkland in the middle of Osceola, and a beautiful stream.
We gave 65 acres of a going tourist park to the village. And now the village, in their wisdom, it's a cost-cutting type of thing, but decided to lock it up.
Okay.
So I'm rather unhappy about that, but there isn't much I can do about it. I'm hoping that with volunteers and stuff, we can get it going again, because it's a beautiful area as a park. You've been there.
Oh, you bet.
Yeah.
That's right.
So that's something that is on hold right now, but we're hoping that it can be restored and get going. It has to have a lot of volunteers to make it work.
Well, we're going to have to go in and hear Larry Lee Phillipson here, the Rockabilly Hall of Fame from Amory. But again, John Schoberg, thank you for all you've done for Polk County.
Another thing that they have in the barn right now is a display by the Smithsonian Institute about barns. And
that's right.
We're one of 4 places in Wisconsin that display is being shown. We aced out 28 other contestants that wanted to have the barn come, but we have a barn in this case that's been lovingly restored, and it's in a shape that'll last for maybe another 100 years.
That's right. So, and how long does the show run, John?
We're going to have, it'll be Thursday, Friday, and Saturday of this next week. And the big problem is we have 190 restored theater seats, and it looks pretty much like we may have it sold out.
Well, that's the best way to do it.
It's a beautiful play by a local author and put together. The play has been made by local people, and it's a beautiful play.
Okay. Well, we're John Schoberg and about to hear Larry Lee Phillipson at the tent, the center of the action on our Sesquicentennial.
Well,
hooked up and set up here. Didn't do too bad though. It took about 10 minutes. We did it. Like cause and station identity for tuning up. Welcome to the Polk County 150th anniversary, folks. I'm glad to be a little part of it. Got some boys here from, there's Denny from Minneapolis, and his brother Gary on the bass, and his brother Jim over there on the drums. They flew in from, their arms are kind of tired from flying, but they flew in from the Twin Cities, and everybody about ready pretty quick. You want to be careful as you don't break your camera. We're going to go back a ways and do some of the old songs that used to be popular years ago in the country field and rockabilly.
But I just thought I would say
Well, get by Joe, gotta go, you might. Gotta go, bro, beat down the body. My bond, the sweetest one, you're mine. We're gonna have a lot of fun on the bayou. Well, Jim will line across the pie. Can you come? Tonight I'm gonna be on the tag meal. Get tired of her job. White lightning, the gale. Son, we're gonna have a lot of fun on the bayou. Get up pretty there now. Oh, Jenny, on the guitar. Give me the fountain newspaper buzzing. In both come to see you gone by the dozen. Dressed in style, go hog wild for your mind. Son of a gun, we're gonna have a lot of fun on the bayou. Well, Jim gonna line a pumpkin pie till he lake 'em. Said tonight I'm gonna see you on the tag of me. It's just time for a first job in this game. Son of a gun, I'm gonna have a lot of fun on the bayou one more time. Pick it up pretty then. Oh yeah. Well, I'm gonna settle down far from town and get me a hero. And I catch all the fish out there in the bayou. Take my money to buy my honey, what do you need? Son of a gun, we're gonna have a lot of fun on the bayou. Well, jump the line from the pie, you lake 'em. And tonight I'm gonna see on the tag of me. It's this time for a first job, mighty group of beer in the game. Son of a gun, we're gonna have a lot of fun. Gonna have a lot of fun on the bayou.
Well, in the background, Larry Lee is continuing, and here we are at the style show. So we're going to take the check here and have a good time with styles over the last 150 years in Polk County. And I've been trying to get something out of the lady who is standing next to me here, and she won't give me a clue. So we'll have to go in and catch a little bit of it on film. Right along the river, and yeah, it'll be really nice. So,
And then like once, hopefully you get the
the first wrecking ball in.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
We're going to welcome you this afternoon to the Style Show. We've had such a great time putting this together for all of you, and I'm so pleased to see so very many. Can you all hear back there? Okay. Whoops, wait a minute. I need that green folder. I'm not nervous, don't worry about it. My uncle used to say, when you were little you were nervous and jerky, and now you're not nervous anymore. I have a little poem I'd like to read to you. One of the things in my private life that I do is I have a collection of little china shoes. It was given to me by my grandmother. So once upon a time, a friend of mine sent me this poem, and it is so absolutely true that I thought I needed to share this as we begin. When I was very little, all the grandmas that I knew were wearing the same kind of ugly grandma shoes. You know the kind I mean, the clunky-heeled black lace-up kind. They just looked so very awful that it weighed upon my mind. For I knew when I grew old, I'd have to wear those shoes. I think of that from time to time. It seemed like such bad news. I never was a rebel. I wore saddle shoes to school. And next came ballerinas, then sandals pretty cool. And then came spikes with pointed toes, then platforms very tall. As each new fashion came along, I wore them, one and all. But always in the distance, looming in my future there, was that awful pair of ugly shoes, the kind that grandmas wear. I eventually got married and then became a mom. Our kids grew up and left, and when their children came along, I knew I was a grandma, and the time was drawing near when those clunky black old lace-up shoes was what I'd have to wear. How would I do my gardening or take my morning hike? I couldn't even think about how I would ride my bike. But fashions kept evolving, and one day I realized the shape of things to come was changing right before my eyes. And now when I go shopping, what I see fills me with glee. For in my jeans and Reeboks, I'm as comfy as I used to be. And I look at all those teenage girls, and there up on their feet are clunky black old grandma shoes. And I really think that's neat. That's how you know a little bit about shoe fashion anyway. In 1985, staff writer Dave Manthe of the Minneapolis Star-Tribune made a very astute observation in his story on the University of Minnesota's Goldstein Gallery collection. He states, "Strange things happen to the human body when it is adorned with clothes that follow the command of fashion. People, if they could be seen naked, would look very much the same now as when the pyramids were being built. They become ludicrous or elegant by turn, depending on clothing. It just proves that fashion wouldn't be fashion if it were static. Life would be very dull." It's the early 1800s. Immigrants are arriving in America by the thousands, many of them finding their destination to what will become the 30th of the United States, Wisconsin. May 1948 is a date that caused the white settlers and Native American tribes alike to realize life for them is about to change. 5 years later, named for the president who was in office at statehood, Polk County was mapped out as one of Wisconsin's emerging counties. Is President Polk here? He was going to pay us a visit, but apparently got a little busy. Scandinavians were the second largest non-English speaking group to immigrate to America. The topography of Wisconsin, being much like the land they had left, drew them here, and they became the strongest influence in the development of Polk County. Packed away in the trunk of a recent Norwegian bride, might have been this bunad, modeled for us today by Audrey Anderson of rural Frederick. The red bib front sateen jumper is worn over a white long-sleeve cotton blouse. The tiny waist is encircled with a belt worked in needlepoint and fastened with a pewter clasp. A hardanger-trimmed apron is decorative as well as functional. Red stockings, black shoes, and slag solia jewelry complete this authentic Norwegian costume and lead us into fashion's Americana. Welcome, Audrey. The year is 1853. Stephen Foster's My Old Kentucky Home is published. Franklin Pierce is in his second year as president. Railroad lines reach as far west as the Mississippi, and the Wisconsin Press Association becomes the nation's first state news service. Perhaps a garment such as our first presentation would have been carried in the luggage of the Joseph Lovelace family when they arrived to make a home near Balsam Lake in 1857. Ladies of fashion could be seen in ensembles of a black cotton lace skirt and top. It was worn over a heavy coarse underskirt and accented with matching black flower decoration at the neck and cuffs. A knit shawl and fashionable hat were essential and are worn today by Kathy Phillip of rural Milltown. Now you see how little Kathy is? No one could wear that top without us putting a fake piece in the back to make it wide enough. So they were really little ladies. Clothing styles changed very little from the mid-1800s to the early 1900s. Tight-fitting bodices went up to the neck, long sleeves came down to the wrist, and skirts were quite full. It was very unfashionable to have skin showing. Every quarter of Amory shares with us a family treasure in this authentic wedding dress worn by her Aunt Rose's grandmother in 1856. The fabric is fine Belgian lace with an intricate floral design crocheted into the hemline as well as the mutton lag sleeves. Self-fabric flounces are added to the skirt, and a ruffled sailor collar gives our bride a demure look as the floral design is carried across the bodice. Beneath the dress are a camisole and a gauzy underskirt. Our model is Kathy Miles of Luck. practicing. Can you imagine anybody wearing that, though? I mean, it's so fragile. When we went to iron it or steam it out, we were all afraid to touch it. Folks getting ready for the big wedding could have been humming the just published Darling Nellie Gray, or wondering if James Buchanan would really become president following the next election, and really appreciating the building of the first bridge between St. Croix and Taylor's Falls. Linda Glenn of Rural Luck models a dress that would be in high fashion at a wedding in 1856 as well. Created in burnished olive, this two-piece garment features a tight-fitted bodice with sewn-in stays, giving the wearer perfect posture. The skirt is unlined but has a reinforced hemline to enhance its wearability. Worn over several petticoats, it was the current fashion of tiny waist and large hip lines. Let's welcome our model, Linda. Check out that hat. Isn't that a beauty? I didn't even describe that, but that is just a gorgeous hat, and you'll have to take a look at it after the show. The year is 1859. Presidential candidate Abraham Lincoln ventures to Milwaukee to speak at the Wisconsin State Fair. Electric home lighting is demonstrated for the first time in the United States, and construction of the Suez Canal begins. In 1860, the area's first newspaper, called the St. Croix, brought news of the formation.
There are a number of people who have served in 150 years on the Polk County Board, and two of them who have been part of that small minority, whatever percentage of citizens who have been privileged to serve on the Polk County Board, are with me right now. Gene Solman from Black Brook and represents Black Brook and Amory, and Bill Johnson, the fourth, from Frederick, who represents Frederick and the West Sweden area, and has headed for a number of years the tourism division of Polk County. Bill, you had a good celebration the other day for the Information Center.
We just celebrated the 10th anniversary of the Information Center, and we've had almost 250,000 people who've gone through there in 10 years. We've been real happy with that. It's worked out real well. And we've come to realize that Polk County is supported by agriculture, manufacturing, and tourism. It's a big piece of the economy around here, and the more we promote tourism and getting people to come and visit Polk County and enjoy the assets we've got, the better.
And you've also been very active in establishing marathons and bike races and dog sled, all kinds of things. Yeah. What have you been into?
It's all part of the, I'm a member of the In and Out of Luck Running Club, and a number of people from the Amory area have, in their last few races we put on, have been up to do that. But those kind of events are all part of the tourism picture, and we bring a lot of people over the years that we've been involved with those sorts of things. They come from probably a 5 or 6 state area around us, so it's all part of the tourism package too.
And you've been on how many years now?
I've been on the county board since '96. So, and in that time we've seen a lot of changes in Polk County, but it's also fun to come to an event like this and see where Polk County came from. So it's been a good deal.
Well, good, and thanks. And I think you're doing sound here today too, aren't you?
I got roped into helping with some of the sound systems. We've got 3 running at the moment, and I'm taking a few pictures that may end up in the Polk County guidebook. So,
well, good.
It's been a good day.
Well, thanks, Bill. Bill Johnson, the fourth, who is a tremendous asset for Polk County and the promotion of Polk County, and a great guy. Another great guy over here, Gene Solman. Gene, you're serving your first term on the county board, right?
That's correct.
And you're on what committees?
I'm chairman of the Extension Committee for the county. I'm chairman of the Lime Quarry Committee and Land Conservation. I'm on the Zoning Committee as vice chairman, and Land Information as vice chairman, and the Revolving Loan Fund as vice chairman. Very busy committees, all of them.
Yes.
And, we have good committees, good committee members. Things have gone very well for the most part, and it's been an interesting and fun tour so far, I'll call it.
Yeah, the tour of duty, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have a great background for being on the county board. Why don't you share some of that so people know that?
Well, I was a high school teacher, as an agriculture teacher in Clear Lake years ago, and of course one of the areas that high school teachers in agriculture teach is parliamentary procedure. So we did that, and I've also been a teacher at the Wisconsin Indiana Technical College as an agriculture instructor for a number of years, and served on lots of committees as a teacher, and did things like negotiations, and served on grievance committees and all kinds of areas where the employees had to deal with management. So I think I've seen both sides of issues, and feel that I have a decent working knowledge to help out county government in those areas.
Well, Gene, I know you have the respect. People in Amory have really appreciated your good work on the county board, and wish you well in the budget battle coming up here. Every unit of government's ready to go into the fray.
Thank you, Harvey.
Okay, Gene Solman, Bill Johnson IV, two members of the Polk County Board.
Carolyn Woodine, would you please join me in welcoming her?
Thank you. Thanks. I'm going to put this down here. It's on.
Is there anything else I can do for you?
Okay. I'll let you know. Thank you.
I'll hold stuff for you, Carolyn, if you want me to.
Oh, if you see it start blowing away.
Oh,
Hi. Can you hear me back there? No. Raise your hand if you can hear me. No, it's not on. Can you hear me? No? Any idea? We learn something every day. I usually give a speech that's called Swedes, Danes, Norwegians. Who are they? Who are we? What do we inherit from this Scandinavian heritage? I'm going to modify that a little bit for this special occasion. And I thought I'd start out with a little Polk County trivia quiz. You've been going around visiting all these exhibits. You've heard people speak. You've done reading. You've bought books that have all kinds of little stories in them. Let's see how you're doing, okay? We'll start out with a really easy question. What United States Senator came from Polk County? Just call out the answer if you know it. Louder! Gaylord Nelson. Okay, and what town did Gaylord Nelson come from in Polk County? Call it out. Clear Lake. Okay. Now, we have to get a little harder. What United States Senator who was from Superior had parents who had lived in St. Croix Falls? Anyone know that one? There was a man with Swedish heritage named Irvin Lenroot. Very early on. Okay. He had parental roots in Polk County. How many years after Wisconsin became a state did Polk County become a county? 5. 5 years. Very good. Okay. How many years before Minnesota became a state did Polk County become a county? 5? 5. Okay. And the point here being Minnesota was behind Wisconsin, right?
They're always behind.
And I can actually remember writing a poem back then that went something, see if I can remember it, something like this. These Minnesotans, they ask for cheers because they're old, 100 years. These Minnesotans, they brag too much about their own fame and might and such. And then it ended, I forget the next stanza, but then it ended, I'm from Wisconsin, oh no, centennial year. What a glorious date. But oh, what fools, they've reached it late. I'm from Wisconsin, and I ought to know, because we reached ours 10 years ago. Okay, true or false? Those who wrote back to either Chicago or to Denmark, Sweden, Norway, about Polk County in the early days always told the truth? False. Okay. A lot of promotion in some of those early materials, which meant that more and more immigrants kept coming. The first cooperative creamery in the county, and actually in the state, was in which village, or perhaps I should say willage? Luck. Okay. And what was unusual about the first butter maker at that first creamery? I'll give you a hint. The same characteristic is shared by the first doctor in Laketown Township. And there's something in one of your handouts today that you got at the gate that would give you a hint too. They were both women. Okay, the first butter maker was a woman, and so was the first doctor, at least the one in Laketown Township. Which town was known as the yo-yo capital of the world? Luck. Or as my Aunt Anna used to say, and I could never understand why, Joyo. You know, if she could, if she could say the Y on the second part, why not on the first part? I don't know, but it always came out Joyo. Now this is a little harder part to this question. Where did the yo-yo originate? No. No? You're close though. China is reasonably close. Anybody have any idea? It's in the handout from the centennial year that the Inter-County Leader published. Ah, it's the Philippines. Do you know what the yo-yo was used for?
Killing monkeys.
Well, yeah, it was used as a weapon. Okay. Osceola at one time had a different name. Does anyone know what that was?
Leroy.
It was Leroy. How did you know this? Oh, very good. Okay, you read the same book I did. Yeah, for a while Osceola was actually known as Leroy. Everyone has heard of quilting bees, probably, but in the town of West Sweden, the women had another kind of bee as well. Any idea what it was?
Honeybees?
Honeybee? No, well, they maybe have those, but no. They had carpet bees, where they got together and somehow made carpets in a cooperative spirit. The very first act of the very first town meeting in Lincoln Township in April of 1861 endorsed freedom for blank. Any ideas on this? Anyone want to make a guess? 1861. First town meeting.
Freedom for slaves.
First act wasn't slaves. If you read the same book I did, you'd know this. It's in that book that was published at the time of the United States Centennial that's on sale all around here, the little blue book that's got something about every township. They endorsed freedom for hogs. The first library in Osceola in 1869 was called a blank library. Who did the library serve at that time? Who? It wasn't called a public library, it was called a lumberman's library. The town of Sterling once encompassed all of what present county? All belonged to part of Sterling. Burnett County, yep. The primary ethnicity of immigrants in the town of Farmington was what?
German.
German, very good. And of the town of Alden? Norwegian. Harvey said this morning that he had done his high school research project on Polk County history. And I guess maybe many of us did history, but many of us don't remember that long. This is very good. Why did the railroads come in to service the lumber industry when the rivers were still available for floating logs? Anybody have an idea? No? No. Didn't have anything to do with that. I learned this from the application that was recently done in Frederick to put the Sioux Line Depot on the National Register of Historic Places. Successful application. Hardwoods do not float. And so once the timber was gone from the pine and we got into the hardwood forest, that was when the railroads had to come in to move stuff out. Okay, and the last one here, which township name comes from the Greek for I have found it? Eureka! Yay! I just have to, before I get a little bit more serious here, tell you my favorite Eureka story, which some of you may have heard before. But when my youngest son was quite young, maybe 5, 6, 7, we were playing Trivial Pursuit. And he got the question, what did Archimedes say when he discovered he could float in the bathtub? And I was trying to give him a hint, and I said, you know, when we go from St. Croix Falls up to visit your Aunt Viv, we drive right through a little town, and that's the same word. And he said, Cushing! Okay. Now, I'm going to see if we have any Swedes here. And if we do, I'll be able to tell because you'll join with me or get tears in your eyes, okay? On the deck I stand at night when the stars above are bright, far away from friends and home. Sadly here I roam. Swallows on their wings so high, now in spring they homeward fly, to the land where sunlight beams into my childhood dreams. Hälsa dem där hemma, hälsa far och mor, hälsa gröna hagen, hälsa lilla bror. Om jag hade vingar flöge jag med dig, svala flyg mot hemmet, hälsa dem från mig. Now, many people do get a little teary with this old song, Greet the Folks at Home. Greet father and mother. The little swallow is to bring greetings back to the homeland. Here we have another passage. I hope you can hear me. Now they were at last settled. Now they would stay here forever. At home on Lake Kichisaga, as Carl Oscar put it. So strange it sounded to have her home linked to that name. She was to be at home here for the rest of her life, but she wasn't at home. This house was her home, but it was so far away. Here was away for Christina. Sweden was home. It ought to be just the opposite. The two places should change positions. She had moved, but she could not make the two countries move. The countries lay where they had lain before. One had always to be for her away. The other would always remain home. And she knew for sure now, she had to admit it to herself. In her heart, she felt she was still on a journey. She had gone away, but she hoped to return. Home to Christina, this encompassed all that she was never to see again. I call my speech often the divided heart because of that feeling of the first immigrants of always being torn between their new land and the homeland. And that is a selection from the books which happily we have about this part of the country. We're extremely fortunate to have the Moberg books available about settlers just across the river, having the same experiences as the settlers in Polk County. I'm not a historian, I'm a lover of literature. And I love literature because it's in the poems, the songs, the stories, the letters that we get the feelings and emotions of the people, what it was actually like. Statistics and facts only go just so far in telling us what the experience was. And so what I want to do is use a lot from those books and other poems, stories, letters. If we look at immigration in this nation of immigrants, which we live in, Scandinavians don't even make it in the top 10 list of ancestry in this country. We're way behind the German, the Irish, the English, the African, the Italian, the Mexican, the French, the Polish, the American Indian, and the Dutch. And of the 52 million people who left Europe in 1840 to 1914, only 5% were from the Nordic countries. So we're not talking huge numbers. But if we look at the question in a little bit different way, we find something else. If we look at the percentages of population which left from those countries, it is very, very high. The Norwegians lost the most. They lost fully a quarter of their people to, actually 33%, to immigration. Sweden lost almost a quarter percent, Iceland 18%, and Denmark and Finland 12 to 13%. If you take them all together, it's like a fifth of the population of the Nordic countries left during those years. And if we look at regions of the country, of course, immigration stands out from particular places. And this is one of the areas of our very, very ethnic state of Wisconsin that is very, very Scandinavian. If I walk down the dirt road Freedom Drive from Highway 48, where we live west of Frederick, I come quickly to Laketown Township of Polk County, where my mother was born, at the foot of what we now call Freedom Hill. Burnett County, at 44% Swedish born in 1880 and 1905, was, according to historians, one of the strongest concentrations of Swedes in the United States. And Trade Lake Township, where we live and where I grew up, is a kind of super diamond in this diamond field at 92% Swedes in 1905. Now, when we look at some of the questions about why people left Europe, you probably know that most immigrants left for economic reasons then, as they do now. But there were some people who left for other reasons. So I have ancestors who left because they were Baptists in Sweden, and the state Lutheran Church, they thought, did not treat them very well. And so they came to a place where they could have more freedom. Now, when I look at the Moberg books, one of the things that's striking all the way through is that repeatedly what the immigrants feel in this new country is a change in the authority that's over them. I don't know if there are others of you who've done genealogical research into Scandinavian roots. Has anyone gone into those records at all? One of the things that's really wonderful is that you can find out so much information. So, for example, with the Swedish records, I can go back and find out when all 64 of my great-great-great-great-grandparents went to church, which Sundays they missed church, because there's a record of when they took communion. I can find out whether they could read. I could find out whether they could explain Luther's catechism, and I could even find out how well they could explain Luther's catechism, because the little markings in the pages where the minister came in every year to check on every person in the household, are like little grade markings. So I can tell whether they got A's, B's, or C's. So I'm kind of proud actually that my grandfather, when he was 12, and he left Sweden with his parents because they were Baptists, could not explain the structure of the Swedish church. He got a 0 on that one. Because if you look at it from the point of view of the information collected, it's wonderful. If you look at it from the point of view of living under authorities that collect that information every year on every single person, it's not quite so appealing. So I figure I have the best of both worlds. It was, I can go back and find out all this stuff, but on the other hand, my direct ancestors were the ones who wouldn't put up with it. They were the ones who got the heck out of there. They were the risk takers. They were the ones who sought a freer life. So the immigrant families over and over again found that it was very unusual to not have a church person or a sheriff or a judge or someone telling them what to do. Can you hear me at all? Okay. At one point, Karl Oskar is reading about what's going on in Sweden. And one king has died and another king has come to take his place. And the paper, of course, raves about the king who died. And Karl Oskar thinks, if everybody had been so happy and satisfied during Oscar's mild and just reign, why then had so many thousands of his subjects emigrated to America? And his younger brother Robert is reading in his almanac, and he reads, authorities in America are not like in Sweden, eternal and mighty. This is so because it is not, as it is in Sweden, put in place by God. Those in power do not use the catechism to keep the populace in obedience. No one need obey unless he murders or steals. If anyone obeys in North America, then it's because he's still too much Swedish. I want to turn out a little bit to the churches that were set up. When you have this amount of freedom, you have to create your own institutions. And to a certain extent, you're going to follow what you brought with you, but you want to make changes as well. So it is very touching, I think, in the immigrant books, in the Moberg books, that the first church service is held in a barn. And Karl Oskar, when this happens, says something like, the founder of Christianity was born in a stable. So it was utterly fitting that the first congregation Christian in the wilderness be founded in a barn. Now, when I started reading through that Polk County history book from 1876, I discovered that in the town of Farmington Township, that the first church service was also held in a barn. And somebody named Charles Ayers, who must have been a very important man in the town of Farmington, wrote that the barn belonged to a man named William Ramsey, and the other portion of the barn where they held the service was filled with hay. And Charles Ayers also recorded, because he took up the collection, that fully $5 was collected at that first church service in the town of Farmington. Churches multiplied with amazing speed in the early days. In 1874, my great-grandfather, Eric Wadeen, wrote home from the shores of Round Lake, which isn't very far from Polk County, just across the border, to relatives in Sweden, that there were big prayer meetings at the Baptist church. But he said the Methodists are so good at twisting God's word and to convince the newly converted not to believe the Baptists. And then he went on to say, it's amazing how many sects they have here in America. But then he goes on, it's like he's fallen into the same pattern, because he said, God has blessed us here at Trade Lake more than any other place in nearly all America. We have 6 preachers. Little town of Trade Lake. No matter what the inconveniences were, Carl Oscar felt much happier here, and the others felt, he expressed the happiness than he had in the old place. Here no one ruled him, no officials insisted that he bow down to them, no one demanded that he obediently and humbly follow a given path, no one interfered with his doings, no one advised him, no one rebuked him for refusing advice. He had seen no one in authority. Nobody came to tell him what he must do. Here he had not met a single person to whom he must defer. He was his own minister and sheriff and master. One of the poems that I found, we don't know who the author was, but from a Norwegian immigrant, expresses in translation this sort of hate-love feeling, I guess, that the immigrant would have for the homeland, remembering what some of the difficulties were in being under so many powers, but also feeling pretty lonesome for the trees and the woods and the mountains and the other things. So this man writes, "Farewell, Norway. God bless you. You were always hard-hearted and stern, but I still honor you as a mother, even though you cut my bread thin. Another land now offers me independence, a return for my toil, and a bright future for my family. This you did not offer me, Norway, filled as you were with wealthy men. You were governed by the power of the rich and shackled in bondage. I will always remember you under the many changes fate may bring, and always pray that you will be able to throw off the chains that embittered my life." If we sort of break down this kind of Scandinavian grouping, there are some big differences in the settlement patterns between the different Scandinavian groups. The Norwegians and Swedes tended to settle much more overwhelmingly on in the countryside, which may be, I like to say, one of the reasons why was my brother still back there somewhere. Where did he go? I guess he left. But my brother, who's an agronomist, is pointing out frequently how many agronomists who've attained worldwide fame have come from Polk and Burnett County. And it may be that heritage on the land. Land was a very precious commodity to someone coming from a country like Norway, where only 4% of the land is tillable. And of course, the availability of American land under the Homesteading Act of 1862 meant that for the work of your hands, there was something that was much more precious than gold available. A lot of the homesteading settlement was further west in Minnesota and the Dakotas. The Wisconsin land kind of was taken up a little bit earlier, except up in this part of the country, which was still wilderness pretty much when that act was passed. And so we did see quite a bit of benefit from the Homesteading Act. The Danes tended to settle a bit more in the cities, and the Danes were more assimilated into American culture more rapidly. Now, I kind of like to say that it's because Danes are much friendlier and happier and more sociable than other Scandinavian groupings, and that may be the case. I know we used to, well, actually, it's still true. I have been in a bar in Luck, but it was not until last year that I was ever in a bar in Frederick where I graduated from high school, because it was, I mean, it was so much a sin. Except if you went to Luck, where it was all right. And so I think there was some of that. But it was also true that the proportions of men who came in Danish immigration was higher, which meant that they tended to marry non-Danes much more. And so this assimilation happened much faster. So you'll notice that even with the various groups nationally of ethnic background, that the Norwegians are very, very strong, and the Swedes somewhat almost as strong. But the Danes, it's a little bit harder to find these cohesive ethnic groupings and promotion of ethnicity with the Danes. Now, what I'd like to get on to now is very quickly the frightening side to freedom. We've said that this is what the immigrants discovered, that everything was more free, that you didn't have authorities over you. Well, if everything is more free and you have no authorities, that also means you have to take care of yourself. Now, the early Swedes who came to Wisconsin, to the southern part, down by Pine Lake, down by Milwaukee, tended to be from the upper classes or the educated classes. And when they got out into the wilderness or the frontier, they really didn't have a lot of skills to go on. And so some of the groups that followed, the very first ones, were said to have spent most of their time complaining about why there weren't any servants available. Well, this is not the case for Carl Oskar and Christina and the immigrants here. Carl Oskar saw right away that he must take care of himself. He must survive with only the help of his hands. By the shores of Chisago Lake, he demonstrated his handwork, his craft, his hard work in the house he built for his family. This is the description of it. It was to be 8 feet high at the eaves. The timbers were rough-hewn, and now the men smoothed the upper and under sides of the logs to make them lie close together. Carl Oskar would later fill in the cracks with moss, which he intended to cover with a mixture of clay and sand. The timbermen's most complicated task was the fitting of the logs together at each corner. When a corner you can lay, then you get a timberman's pay, was an old saying at home. The long, heavy logs were hoisted into place on the wall by the combined strength of all 5 men. Each log was fastened to the underlying timber by means of thick pegs driven into the lower log and fitted into auger holes in the next one above. And the echo from the timbermen's axes rang out over the forest in the clear autumn air. It was thrown from tree to tree. The axes cut and hammered, and the echo returned from the other side of the lake. And in rhythm with his axe blows against the timbers, he sang the timberman's song, which his father and grandfather before him had sung at house building in the homeland. A song that had been sung through centuries when walls were raised for Swedish peasant houses, a song always sung to the music of axe and hammer. And in fact, they had to create pretty much everything on the farm and in their household. So Carl Oskar spent a lot of time making furniture and tools, chairs, food vessels, snow shovels, hay forks, rakes. It's not so surprising maybe that a lot of the Scandinavians passed up 15 feet of topsoil down in the prairies of Illinois and Iowa and came north to the woods where they had to cut down the trees because, well, as we used to say, they evidently saw the prairies treeless, the great sea of grass, as Ole Rolvog calls it in Giants in the Earth, and thought, boy, this must be really bad soil. Trees can't even grow here. So they came to the Northwoods and used that wood. They used the wood for everything. Carl Oskar had already worked as a lumberman, carpenter, mason, roofer, rope maker. Now he attempted a new craft, that of shoemaker. And of course the Swedish immigrants around here were called the wooden shoe people. And I hope you noticed that I kind of came with my wooden shoes. I have to do this. You see? I became famous at UW-Whitewater, I think my very first year there. I wore some wooden shoes into class, and the students was like, what do you got on, what have you got on? And so I took off my shoe and lifted it up and held it up. And 20 years later, I would run into a student and say, oh, I remember that day that you took off your shoe and held it up for the class. I thought, oh boy, I can make myself famous very easily. Okay, I noticed in one of the Wisconsin Historical Society books, which you may have seen, Swedes in Wisconsin, Danes in Wisconsin, Finns in Wisconsin, Germans in Wisconsin, and so on. Frederick Hale, who wrote Swedes in Wisconsin, listed the kinds of skills that the settlers brought to this part of the state. They had been in the old country millers, tailors, cobblers, cabinet makers, smiths, miners, carpenters, painters, masons, watchmakers, sailors, teachers, soldiers, and machinists, as well as farmers. And I think any farmer or any farmer with an imagination thinking about what it would take to start from scratch would have to admit that probably a farmer really does have to be all of those things at one time or another. Of course, the rewards, and I will have to stop with this because we don't have enough time. The rewards, both physical and psychological, for this kind of independence and enterprise are enormous. My great-grandfather reported home to Sweden in 1874 that it has been very hard for the working class here because there's so little money. The banks have closed. The largest factories in the world have closed for lack of money. But we don't have it so bad here at Trade Lake. Only that it's hard to get money to buy things that one needs. But then he goes on, I don't believe that we will have to buy much fodder, for we have got over 60 bushels wheat and 34 bushels oats. We got a threshing machine, so we threshed on New Year's Eve, and we have butchered 5 pigs and a cow. So yeah, no money, but we can get along without the money. And St. Croix Falls' own Ray Standard Baker, the great journalist, and his younger brother Harry, of course, went with their father up into the wilds of Burnett County and through Polk County because J.S. Baker was hard of hearing, and the sons had to sort of interpret things for him and write things down as people said things. Well, one of the things that Ray Standard Baker said in one of his, the autobiography, was that life on the frontier was never cheap. The great teaching of my youth on the frontier had been the incomparable preciousness, the value of a man, of a personality. In Chicago, the man seemed lost. I myself felt lost. One became part of the crowd. There was no anxious family looking on, no real neighbors. Life on the frontier was never cheap. It was too precious. It was to be preserved. And I want to end with just the image going back to Karl Oskar and Christina, which occurs in the statue over in Lindstrom, and it is duplicated in the statue at the Emigrant Museum in Växjö, Sweden, of Karl Oskar looking west, that's west, right? Standing very straight, determined, head high. And Christina, you know, so touching, standing beside him. She's smaller. And she's trying very hard. She has her body facing west to the new country. But poor Christina, her heart is always back there in the homeland, and her head is turned back to Sweden. Well, I like to think, I didn't have time to talk about what we have inherited, but you get a sense that one of the things I think is a kind of independence of spirit and an enterprise, which I see all around here these days actually, and certainly at this event today. But I think we share the benefits of the immigrants and the things that they brought with them, and the things that we have here in America, that in a sense they didn't leave everything behind. They brought everything with, and we get to share it. But we also have, we're not torn anymore. We can benefit from both of these sides of the divided heart of Christina and Carl Oscar. And I would just like to add one thing. I do always write out a speech, in part because if someone would like to have a copy of the whole thing, I can easily make you a copy. But I'm very happy to have talked with you today, and I hope to see you again. Thank you.
Now on the Redwood deck from Amory, from the Senior Citizen Center, performing for the Sesquicentennial show, our own Lively Steppers.
And we are going to do a few dances for you this afternoon, so we just feel honored to be invited to come and enjoy this big event. So you sit back and enjoy, and we will stay up here and dance and enjoy. First dance we're going to do is called Riding the Rodeo.
We have a display that is here that has all kinds of stuff. that is part of a lot of persons' childhood here, including some Red Wing pottery from Joel, from the Mercantile, and again Range, and Dutch's Grocery in Amory, and an old seat that looks for a horse-drawn mower that used to sit on when you were a kid. And for all of you who remember the Standard Oil Crown, I have always wanted one of those. This one's from 1949, and by the time I saw them, I never had enough money to get one by the time they were old enough, and I always had my eye on one at Fallon, Wisconsin, and one day it was gone, so I missed my chance. But I always loved those things. They reminded me of strawberry ripple ice cream cones and the old Texaco signs. And if we take a look along here, some of here's from the Frederick Oil Company, 1927 container and 1920 container that is here. Here's a Tonka toy. If you want to take a look, one of the Tonka trucks from 1955. And from 1960, some of the toys. And down along here, if you can hear that nice putt every once in a while, there it goes. Some of the old engines that we've had in the area. So this says a Faultless and Joseph Thompson. Well, the outboard motor has been a part of the history of Polk County, a significant part, and Jim Judkins is here and has a display of some of the classic outboards. So thank you for participating in Sesquicentennial.
You bet. Thank you.
And what have you got here?
Well, I've got, this is the oldest one that I have here. This is a 1925 Alto, which is, Alto is an acronym for Evinrude Light Twin Outboard. And actually this motor was stationary, sat stationary on the transom. It was steered by a rudder in the back. And going up in the age, there's a 1939 Alto. And that's an 8.5 Alto Fleet Twin. And a sister, if you will, to that is a more modern Fleet Twin, the Evinrude, 1955 Evinrude. That's a 7.5. So considerably different size and configuration. The Wizard, which was made by Mercury, was a house brand. They had house brand outboard for most stores like Gamble's and Firestone and all those. Wizard was made for Western Auto, and a Mercury, 1956 Mercury, or is this 55? 55 Mercury and a 56 Johnson 3-horse.
Now, how'd you get into collecting?
Momentary lapse of reason. Actually, my dad had I remember my dad buying a 1958 Johnson 10-horse, and I loved that motor, so when we moved up to Wisconsin, I wanted to get a 5810. So that wasn't my first motor, actually. I had a few others, and eventually I did get a 5810 horse, but as Dave Barry says, that there's a fine line between hobby and mental illness, and I think
You're on the line.
Yeah.
Okay.
I got struck bad. So.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, Harvey.
Very much. And do you sell at all, or just?
Yeah, I belong to an antique outboard club, so I buy, sell, trade, and you know, all that kind of fun stuff.
And people, if they're interested in getting the illness, they could contact you.
Sure. 294-2940. Easy phone number to remember.
All right. Yeah.
Give me a call.
Okay, Jim Judkins. And a good part of Polk County's history.
Thanks.
And another major part of the history of this country and Polk County, the automobile. You can see some beautiful classic restored automobiles that are here, and they've paraded through the grounds today and may have one more parade yet today, but we're grateful to all of the people who brought them to display at the Sesquicentennial.
I had a runner around up at Brantford and I had that touched the pin. That was beautiful. This basically, we bought this.
Over the 150 years of Polk County, there have been many huge fires, not only in the countryside, but fires that have burned down major portions of all the municipalities that are in Polk County. And as soon as people could get together to set up a fire department, all of the places that are incorporated did. And we are glad to have examples here of these old fire trucks. The first one here is from the Frederick Fire Department. And then we've got a 1926 truck from the Amory Fire Department that I think is going to be on display at the new fire hall in Amory. And then an old timer from the St. Croix Falls Fire Department. And we are very grateful for all of the people over the history of Polk County who have served as volunteer firefighters for all of us. One of the great traditions, although it's used by all Scandinavians but is particularly identified with the Danes, is Abelskiver. And it's the Abel, it means apple, but I really kind of like them plain. And they're in essence sweet, round pancakes that are absolutely delicious. And if you don't watch out, you'll eat about a dozen of them before you know it. And West Denmark Lutheran Church is kind of the Abelskiver capital of Polk County. And they have always had great suppers. I think first Wednesday in May, is that it? Where they have people come from all over, serve hundreds of people who come to get this delicacy. So what they are doing is turning the Abelskiver with knitting needles. And you have to be very precise with how you do it, otherwise they can burn quickly, and if you're not quite good enough at judging, you can have them a little doughy in the middle when you eat them. So the trick is to get them absolutely right, that they are soft and that little crust cooked full through but without being hard to eat. So West Denmark Church has part of the history of Polk County as being the Abelskiver champions of everyone. We will have 2 plates of the 3.
Okay.
And what do you want to drink, Larry? Okay, if you have a glass of water, or do we have...
lemonade and coffee.
Okay, I'll have a cup of coffee. I need a little caffeine this afternoon, and then I think there's probably a fountain here that we can find the water. Oh, okay, we'll get a glass of water. Thank you.
The water.
Okay. Now, I'm not sure what this looks like, strawberry jelly, but usually Abelskiver is very good with any kind of jelly on it or jam, primarily raspberry or strawberry really is very good. And then also a little syrup here. I don't know what this is. We'll pretend, being this is the Sesquicentennial, that this is actual maple syrup from Polk County. And I don't see butter here. For anybody who is ever going to have Abelskiver, it is delicious when you absolutely drown it in butter. You can eat it with butter alone. You don't need the jam, you don't need the syrup. Butter is good on it, but if you got the jam and the syrup, that's not bad either. So Larry and I are going to take a break, get some sugar in us, so we've got a few more hours to go. Larry got called away to set up for Duck for the Oyster, and we missed the horse parade, the horse and carriages that went all through the fairgrounds, but we can get a look at some of them that are coming here, and we can take a look over here and catch some of the whinnying that's going on. Let me head over here. We'll get one parting shot of the horses. We've chased them around the shed here for a while, and as Larry gets that final look at those nice carriages and those pretty horses, we can kind of see the horse trail that is left behind here around the fairgrounds at St. Croix Falls. One of the projects that has gotten some great notoriety is the quilting project. All of the churches in Polk County were asked to provide a space. They were given a patch to put on something that showed their church or a symbol of their church. And so we have the church quilt of Polk County, which is a wonderful tribute to the life of the church in our county over 150 years. Larry is focusing on the map that is here with a dairy display of all kinds of the old Land O'Lakes memorabilia, and Charlie and Daryl are with me. How did you come to put all this stuff together, and whose is it?
It's Daryl's. I made up some history of our cheese plants and butter plants that came into existence from 1885 up until present day. And we have about 75, 76, 77 dairy plants in Polk County from that time on. There's only two that are operating yet. That's the F&A out of Dresser and Foremost Farms out of Clayton. But anyway, they were butter plants, cheese plants, creameries that came into existence over the years.
And I still remember the range, Upriver Beaver Co-op, the creamery there, just one truck after another, Virgil Johnson, everybody all lined up, unloading all day, and the hustle and bustle, and West Whedon, and I mean, every four corners almost.
Atlas and Trade Lake.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
You were from up in that area.
Yeah, up in the north part of the county, and so they were all over there, and then they were all over down here too. So, well, you worked for how long?
40 years and 4 months.
Okay. Any good stories to come out of that, or too many to tell, or that you can't tell?
No, it was good times. For the most part of it, I worked in the feed mill, and then in the powdered milk when the feed mill went down, and they sold it. They transferred it to Senex, Senex, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I, a couple years ago, teaching at Amory, had a class, and we were talking about some of the poetry from the country, about farms and so on, of classic things, and in fact it was The Death of the Hired Man with Robert Frost. Of course, no one knew what a hired man was, and at the time, out of probably 25 kids, there were 2 that were on dairy farms yet. And it used to be, when we were all younger, you'd have half or more who were farm kids, and the other group of kids would be from town, and everything, and the change has just been an amazing thing in Polk County, and I don't know if it's for the better. If you'd get me up to milk every morning, I'd probably say it's for the better, but that I don't have to, or that a lot of people don't. But on the other hand, I think it's a passing of a way of life that was a wonderful thing for everybody who had part of it.
Yes, a rewarding life.
Yeah.
It was good times, because all those bull haulers that came in from northern Minnesota and Wisconsin and all over, come over to pick up feed, you know, and we really had a lot of good people, I'll tell you. Those guys were really good.
Yeah. Well, any final things that you want to mention? It's fun to see all the different kinds of cream cans and separators and all of the things that made the creameries go.
Yeah, a lot of this stuff came from the museum. Carl Johnson and I hauled a number of items from the museum yesterday. Our Friday butter box here, our cream separators, our butter tins, and some of the other items that are used in the dairy business. So we've had a very interesting day. A lot of people have visited, a lot of questions. You know, we've tried to answer the best we could.
Yeah.
But a lot of interest that are shown in this display.
Well, thanks for putting it all together. When you talk about the history of Polk County and This is the core of the history of Polk County, I think, right here. So, thank you.
No, he put it all together. I just wandered in.
Oh, okay. Well, that's fine. Thank you for wandering in.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Elaine Boucher, you have been occupied most of the day here with the quilt project. What's going on?
Well, right now I'm representing the Frederick Mixed Sampler Quilt Guild. We have a raffle quilt that we're standing in front of, and it's going to be raffled off October 5th. And it was made mostly by one woman, Shirley Johnson from Osceola.
And tickets are 6 for $5 and $1 a piece.
That's right.
All right.
And it's hand quilted.
And this is typical. The history of quilting in Polk County is a big part of our history, 150 years. And one of the things that has been really positive, I think, is that all of these quilting guilds have cropped up recently within the last 10 or 15 years.
That's right. That's right.
And how did you get into it?
I got into it with Minnesota Quilters about 15 years ago because I saw a quilting demonstration at the Minnesota State Fair.
And
then
that hooked you?
It hooked me. And then we moved here 13 years ago, and I've been a part of 4 quilt guilds in the area.
All right.
I'm hooked.
Yes, you are. You're going to be in the quilt pretty soon yourself.
Yes,
so.
right. Wrapped in one.
Yes. Elaine Boucher, if you want to get in touch with her, just check with Elaine or call me at City Hall or something, and I'll get you in touch with Elaine if you're interested in this quilt or doing quilting in Polk County.
That's right.
This is a quilt owned by Elaine, one of the most colorful ones of a display of many quilts that are here today. And this is from fabric from the 1950s and earlier, put together in a very bright and colorful pattern. In a minute we're going to interview John Jenkins from Osceola. John has been very diligent. These were photos that were all kind of tucked away in boxes at the Polk County Historical Society, and John went through and made copies of them so that people could take a look. Most of these photos are from Osceola, but some are from other places in Polk County, and you can order copies of them also so that you can see some of the old-time buildings that existed in Osceola particularly. And the ones that are on top here are also available in prints. And then from the Tourist Information Center at Polk County, some of their large blow-ups and prints that they use for decoration for the Tourist Information Center are located here. Great history of trains in Polk County. That Osceola train is still available for people to go to Marina on the St. Croix and to Dresser. We've got all the history of the river boats and the steamboats that existed along the St. Croix River. And of course the Dells and the boat trips that are along there have all been classic places for people from all over America to visit. And some other great photographs, old photographs along the lakes and rivers here and of the Ojibwe people. So we're going to talk to John here in a second and take a look at a videotape that he has produced, and then get a chance to see some of the exciting things that are happening with history in Polk County. John Jenkins is with me. He has put in hundreds, if not thousands, of hours of work on these projects on behalf of the history of Polk County. Thank you for doing that, and tell me how you got involved with the history of Osceola and Polk County, and then about the tapes that you've already put together.
Well, first off, I'm a retired history teacher and computer teacher, so you put those two together and you can take history pictures and computerize them. And it's my hobby, photography, and I took copies of pictures from boxes found in back rooms, and I thought they should be out for the people to use and see. So the ones that were on the wall, now these big ones are not mine. They were done by the St. Croix Falls Historical Society, and I just stole them from the information book. The ones up above and at the end, I copied the photographs and I enlarged them and I put them out for show, and that's where I think the public has a right to see it, or should see it. And the ones that I digitized, and most of them are digitized, we were thinking of this Sesquicentennial, and I wanted to have something to show. And we also want to have an inventory of our photographs, so if you're looking for the Farmington Center School, which is located just in the park here, but I've got pictures of it. We can get on a database and find it. Now, people have said I'm further along on that project than I am. It's a massive project, but it's one I enjoy.
Well, I think it's great that you've taken that task. People need to do that, and it's wonderful when people can have the talent and the interest to be able to combine all of that.
Well, I appreciate your comments, because that's really why I'm doing it. And the DVDs, these are DVDs. We're talking about making CDs. I don't know how the people are going to use them. They're not VHS yet. They're not tape. I could convert the DVD downgrade it to a videotape, but time will tell when it happens. I expect I want to mass produce a bunch of these so that I can have them out and about.
For anybody who is watching this anywhere in Polk County and is interested in getting in touch with you, how can they do that, John?
Well, there's two ways. Number one, I have a website that is called OsceolaWis.com, W-I-S, one word. And I'm on there, and there's some of the pictures are on there too, and they can download those pictures for free. It's
okay.
I don't have any price on them. That's not why I'm doing that. The DVDs, they can contact me, OsceolaWis.com, and they could email me and ask me and tell me who they are, and we can work it out from there.
Good. Larry, if you want to just kind of take a look at the DVD on there and fade out on that, we'll thank John Jenkins for all his work.
Thank you.
Well, the culminating event for the evening of the Sesquicentennial celebration is a dance excuse me, in the sheep barn. And Duck for the Oyster is performing, and Kathy is doing the calling right now for the Virginia Reel. Duck for the Oyster is going to play kind of through the history of Polk County with all of the dances. And so they've just started out here with some of the dances that are the period pieces from 150 years ago. This is sponsored by the city of Amory. We're glad to have Duck for the Oyster and the big concluding evening here for the dance. Larry Stelter is our cameraman, and he is going to go back in a second to play mandolin. And if we can figure out how to have him run the camera and play mandolin at the same time as well as he does, we'll do that someday, but not tonight. But for now, I want to thank all of the people who worked for more than a year to put together the Sesquicentennial celebration. Daryl and Rosalie Kittleson, Polk County Historical Society, and everybody who volunteered all of their things that went into the whole day here, and for all the speakers and performers. We tried to catch as much flavor of the day as we could and some of the historical things. We were sorry we missed some of the displays. We had hoped to get to all of them, but there were some other great displays that were here from the different societies across Polk County, and some of the other acts and performances that were here. But for now, Larry Stelter and I wish all of you who are watching this a very happy 150th Polk County birthday party. We hope you have enjoyed this flavor of what has happened here at the St. Croix County Fairgrounds today. And Larry and I will be here for the bicentennial and for the bicentennial and a half coming up in another 100 years. So for Larry Stelter and myself, Harvey Stour, we wish you a good night and happy dancing.